Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherford.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Infinifactory, a game that was developed and published by Zachtronics and was released in 2015 on Linux, OS X, Windows, and the PlayStation 4.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
All right, so Infinifactory, there's some very dumb things that I want to bring up first.
Okay, I wouldn't have it any other way.
And so my mind is currently racing, but none of the thoughts are really sticking because they're all bad.
You got to get them out there.
Yeah, let's just rapid fire. First things first, and maybe this will probably be a discussion in itself, but Infinifactory is a puzzle game. It's a pure puzzle game. There isn't really anything else, any other genre that seems like it makes any sense here. There's you could debate that there's some sandbox elements to it.
Yeah, factory simulator isn't really a genre.
No, there's maybe a few of those games, most of which were developed by Zachtronics. So you end up with a game that is in a genre that I would say we don't have that much experience with, or you could also argue are just bad at.
I don't think it's necessarily that we're bad at them. It's just that we're not smart in the way that engineers are smart.
That is true. Yeah. So yeah, my experience with this game is going to be wrought with deep personal insecurity. But I do also have other things to say about it that I think kind of counteract that idea. Specifically, if you were aware of Zachtronics' other games, the one that I'm most familiar with is Space Chem, which is a game that I know that people who I knew had played and talked about when it came out. And I never played because I looked at it for 2 seconds and I said, no, I'm not playing that. Not out of spite, but out of a knowledge of a self-awareness that I would not be able to do anything in that game. And the thing is, there's a chance that I might be able to do some things in that game. But Infinifactory to me is a very different thing, because even though the puzzles themselves are similar and the solutions that you have to come to are in a similar way, Infinifactory is by far the most approachable version of this that has been made.
Yeah, I would agree. Just the 3D visual nature of it, and the simple language of placing blocks, right? Mm-hmm. Which you could compare to Legos and to Minecraft, etc. Yeah, it's just easy to understand. It's kind of strangely intuitive. It starts out the test levels. I was surprised. I'm oh, I can actually do this. Because I seen some clips of this game where later levels, which are fucking crazy. And this is the kind of game where you can make a working calculator out of all the parts and stuff. So right. I was ready
Which
to just...
is in itself a genre.
Yeah. So I was ready to not be able to do anything. So I do think it starts out on an approachable level for sure.
Yeah. And it goes beyond that. It to me reads like that was one of their primary goals of this game, because it is a game that takes place in a 3D space from a first person perspective. It uses a very visual language for the way that you go about solving the puzzles. So it's the difference between this and Space Chem is that in Infinifactory you can visualize what you're about to do without having to have a deep understanding of the game systems. You understand what blocks and conveyors will do.
Yeah, you can conceptualize a factory, but not everybody conceptualized chemical engineering.
I would in fact argue that less than 1% of people could visualize chemical engineering just in their head.
Right.
And so to that end, like, I will say that there were a lot of things in this game that I would, to put it charitably, had a tough time with. Was in a bit of a pickle on a couple of levels. But because of the presentation, there at the very beginning of each level, I always had at least like an idea of something I could do. Not necessarily of a solution to the whole thing, but like, okay, I need to accomplish this, and then I could go about accomplishing that. And once that was done, I could then use that solution, maybe not in the state that I had created it in, but within a larger structure in order to put together whatever the output was supposed to be. And that made it a lot more accessible than a lot of puzzle games. And to me, and we've talked about a few puzzle games on the show before, the one that this most resembles to me is Baba Is You. It was another game that I had like when I went into a level, I had an idea of what things were going to be like. And similarly to Baba Is You, I reached a pretty clear point in both of them where I realized that there wasn't a more game for me.
Right.
There was like a cutoff point that the game acknowledged that I was like, now it is too hard. We have taken a step above, and I am just not capable of this anymore.
Yeah, and then you just built a wall out of platforms to symbolize the wall that you had hit in the game.
Yeah, and just stared at it for 6 hours.
No, I agree with that. And I think similar, like if dear listener, if you've played Baba Is You, I do think it is a good comparison point, even though the games are very different. Because like I think like the hard part to these kinds of games to me is like internalizing the rules. Like that curve, if that curve is too steep for you, then like you're kind of fucked. And like, yeah, like early on, like I knew I wasn't going to be able to get like more than, halfway through it. Cause I was just like, had a hard time like internalizing like how the welders worked. Like there would be oftentimes I'd like send some blocks through and they would not at all stick together the way I expected them to. And that's like the second mechanic that's introduced. And I'm like still fucking that up. So it can definitely like complicate things. But you can spend all this time setting a thing up and then it not work. And you're like, well, that's 45 minutes down the drain. Now I gotta like start over. So yeah, it can be definitely like hard to internalize how all the pieces work together.
Yeah, I think that there is an element of that is part of why I was unable to like why I stopped where I stopped in the game. And weirdly enough, the level that I quit on was one where I welded something together and then the result was just somehow not what I expected. But that was the first time that had happened to me. Like when welders were introduced, I had a grasp on them and I managed to do things the way that I wanted to. And like there's trial and error in terms of like welding more complicated things, but I don't think that that's a misunderstanding of like the function of it. But like I had welded something to a larger structure and then another block pushed it, which it was intentional for me. I was like, that's how we proceed down the line. And then everything just sort of like fell apart. And I was like, oh, I thought that this would have worked entirely differently than it did. And rather than interrogate that further, I instead threw a hissy fit and quit the game. That being said, I don't think this game never really got like frustrating to me. I think that it was like I was being presented with something that I just was able to identify as being outside of my grasp. And running solutions never takes so long. I say never. I know that at some point that it does. But at the point that I was at, running a solution never takes so long where I'm like, oh, I almost have it. And then like, oh, right at the end. And now I have to start over or whatever. Like most of the time you would run it, see what the problem was, make adjustments, keep running it and making little bits and pieces, like updates here and there, in order for it to work. And to me, I felt like that was a very satisfying method of puzzle solving.
Mm-hmm.
It was never like a Big Bang situation where you set everything up and then it fails and then you have to start again. It was always, you would set things up and it would fail at a certain point and you had to identify what the problem was and then redo it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the puzzles that I did solve in this game, I thought were very cool, fun, even at times to complete. Which may be a bit of an insight into why this game isn't necessarily for me. That it was fun some of the time. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess that's kind of the introduction. This is my story every time that we talk about a puzzle game.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I understood this mechanic up until a point and then it collapsed and I lack the patience to spend the amount of time necessary for me to grasp this new information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Do
think...
you not know about the Elden Ring DLC? It comes out in 9 days. I'm not wasting it here.
No, Zachtronics is too busy making some other crazy game, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, to its credit, though, like, where something that's, like, different about it than Baba Is You is, like, Baba Is You just, like, kept introducing new stuff. And I think this is actually paced out, like, way better. And I also think we just played Quadrilateral Cowboy as well.
Right.
And that was a game that, like, introduces, like, a new mechanic with, like, every, like, level, it feels like. Or every set of levels.
Right.
And yeah, I like that this was paced out better. Like it introduced a couple of things and then like increased the complexity rather than just adding new stuff. So I do think I got further into the game than I would have if it had been designed with like introducing a new tool more often.
Yeah. I was surprised at the depth of the mechanics. Like how many of them there are. But at the same time, like, I agree. I think that, like, it lets you take time to actually master each thing as you get it. It rarely introduces more than one new thing per like set of levels, and I guess depending on your level of competence with this game, each level takes a pretty long time to get through. So you're spending a lot of time with those, and then you can sort of emergently come to grips with different elements of each of the blocks before you have to move on and learn something new. It gives you a lot of time to sort of like internalize, which I think works really well. And a lot of the puzzles that I struggled the most with tended to be ones that were early on in the world, because they were the ones where I was working with something that was completely new to me.
Right.
I do want to call out sort of like the, how do I describe this? The difficulty that I had with the game, and I think this is sort of largely it deals with the setup, right? The way that the game actually presents the puzzles to you. If you haven't played the game before, the fact that the game goes from like it creates blocks and funnels them toward you automatically without you have like it will just dump out your inputs, and then you have to take those and assemble them into an output. And then feed that into a receptacle, essentially. Which means that a lot of the challenge of this game actually comes into play in terms of like timing and getting things to roll into like their positions at the right time. And you unlock different blocks. There's a pusher block that can be used to sort of stop the assembly line while something happens, and then block it later. And then later there's a blocker, which is essentially just a reverse pusher that does the same thing, but the input instead makes it retract instead of push. So essentially it's just like a slightly different, more convenient method of a thing that you already had access to.
Mm-hmm.
But this is never like, almost never is it the correct thing to do to just like block it with a thing and then try and trigger it in such a way that it's going to pull back. You almost always want to sort of like move the blocks in tandem so that everything is coming out smoothly and never creates like backups. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I found this to be not only the most difficult part of the game to manage, but also by far the least fun thing in the game. The fact that like when you were building, you would have to like you could create a contraption that 100% worked and filled the need that you had, but was too fast or too slow and therefore needed to be reworked from the ground up because it couldn't operate in the thing.
Right.
That was the part of the game that I found the most frustrating to deal with, and no mechanic ever came into play that made that easier for me.
Yeah, yeah. I know I had a couple in like maybe the second set of levels, um, where I had to like keep making the conveyor belt like longer so that like the piece would get there at the same time as the other one. So yeah, I definitely had levels like that. But like yeah, I just the complexity of it, like I'm sure there's like way better solutions than the shit that I was doing that would mitigate the need for that, but like yeah, I also don't really know how to deal with it on a lot of in a lot of levels that I did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just to me though it was like that was the thing that sort of broke it for me, because a lot of the stuff that I really enjoyed doing were things that had a single input. So you would get like one block that would come out and you would just have to assemble that into something else. And like sometimes it got more complicated. There's like the uh I don't know how to describe. As the game goes on, you go from like just creating shapes into creating things that actually look like stuff. And
Right.
there's one that is like a spaceship or like a cruiser of some kind that you have to replace the engines on.
Mm.
Uh, and to do that, you had to assemble two sticks of new engines out of individual blocks and then glue them onto the hull as it came by on the assembly line. And that did involve stopping it with a blocker.
Hmm.
And that was just the timing on that to get it to actually like go was I went through probably 8 different solutions to try and get everything to like work in the way that I could and just never could.
Hmm.
I just had to skip the level, go somewhere else, because I just couldn't figure it out. Like to me, that was the thing, not just like a frustration, but like the thing that eventually made it so that I was unable to play the game any longer. I wasn't able to think in the number of like necessary threads
Hmm.
in order to have things being made at the same time and assembled within a period of time that was functional for like the thing that it was allowed for.
Yeah, yeah. Like you can spend a bunch of time like setting a thing up and then like just not be able to get it to work, and then hit that point where you're like, I probably have to start from square one if I want to like actually make it work. Yeah, and that's definitely always a hard pill to swallow. At least for someone like me, I'm sure there are some people who like wouldn't bother at all.
Yeah, and it always ends up being like I don't want to jump into the like statistics screen that shows up just yet because I feel like it actually does warrant its own discussion. But it always ended up what it made me realize is that like a lot of the times my favorite solutions, the ones that I found the most enjoyable, uh, both to devise and then also to sit there and watch make stuff. Were the ones that were the least efficient,
Yep.
like the ones that were nowhere near the average. But because they had so many like moving Rube Goldberg parts, it was really enjoyable to actually sit there and just like look at it do a thing, and it made you feel smart because you were like, even though it's not the most efficient way to do it, you found a way to do it that was so complicated that it looks like nobody would be able to replicate it.
Yeah, it's unique.
Yeah.
It
I
would
have
be
several clips of that.
Yeah, it would be cool if there was almost like a style mode where you get more points for coming up with stuff that's like more unique. But I don't know how it would gauge that.
It would be difficult. It would have
Yeah.
to do like It's like look at the space and be like, did people have to put like a learning AI into the game?
Yeah.
Or they just have like a contest where you submit, and then Zach, I presume, would judge it.
Yeah, I feel like you just had to play test it a bunch. And like you'd have to like see what the average levels look like. And be like, did they make these kinds of things like everyone else? Or did they do I think you could maybe do it that way, but that would be probably very imperfect.
Yeah.
But still probably better than the way they judge photos in Pokemon Snap, so...
I was waiting on that dunk. It needed to happen.
You were
Professor
close.
Oak, more like Professor who doesn't know shit about art. Got him. Did you understand rotators?
I feel like this is also like related to like the welders for me. Like it's like I understand how they work, but then like as soon as you get like a particular setup going into it, it's really hard to anticipate how it's gonna work or like how it's gonna interact. Because like sometimes the way that blocks would move along the conveyors and then like on what axis they would turn, like was definitely something that was hard for me to conceptualize. So those always took like some rearranging for me. So like yeah, I understood them, but like like everything in the way that I understood everything else. Like I think on like a low puny brain level.
Sure, yeah. The I think that like for me it was like I never knew when a block went over a rotator what was going to happen. I would just put the rotator down, send the block over, and then depending on where it ended up, that's how I would build how it got out of that situation.
Right.
So like there's a level another one of my favorite solutions that I had. But it was one of the level was essentially it would spit out these blocks that you had to make into a cross pattern. So it was like a 3 and then 2 stuck to the edges of it.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah, and then it went through stampers that put sensors on the ends of it. And so you had to rotate it in the middle in order to get the stampers to hit the correct sides of it. And I remember like when it came down to that last bit, I had assembled the plus sign and I was happy with how it turned out and I sent it through the final thing. I just like put a rotator down and then but it was just like covered in conveyor belts that were shifting it back into the middle before it could go through the last bit. Because when it went over, I had just no idea what would come up. But that's just me being lazy and like not wanting to learn what arrows mean essentially. The actual problem that I have with the rotators is that things in this game operate on a grid.
Right.
In concept, on paper, they're on a grid. You draw your factory using cubes on squares. But the rotators, when the game is running, like and rendering the stuff, won't work if there's a thing next to them. So even though we're working on a grid, when the rotator operates, now the corners of the thing cut out from the grid and can collide with other things. And if it would do that, the rotator just doesn't function. This was so unexpected to me. For some reason, like the idea of it being in a 3D space and obeying the rules of geometry,
physics.
Yeah, it was so far from my mind that I like set up a rotator, sent a thing through the rotator. It rotated the individual square to 90 degrees like it was supposed to. And I was like, great. And then I set up the rest of the thing and I sent him through and it just didn't rotate it. And I was like, why isn't it rotating it? And so I ended up having to go to the internet and just type in, how do rotators work? To figure out that this problem was a thing. And to me, it's like, I kind of get that. Like, I understand that there was just like I was not conceptualizing the game in the way that it actually is. I was imagining it from a more theoretical perspective than a rendered 3D game actually behaves.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me look at that fucking diagram of the rotator with the alien sitting there
All
and
right.
being like, aha, and go like, you lied to me. Like, this is a woefully incomplete tutorial in my mind.
Yeah.
I
I mean, that's how I felt.
and I felt
with
like I
all
felt
of
that a
those.
lot. Exactly.
Those
right?
diagrams, yeah. Like every single one of them, like, well, the sensor doesn't work anything like like the fucking diagram said.
Yeah, that one especially is bad. Not necessarily because the level that they put it in contradicts it in the way that the rotator sort of does. That one is bad because it is such a difficult to physically convey
Right.
concept that they tried to do as an IKEA diagram. Like, it's just not possible to really get that across in the small space that they gave.
Right.
But I do agree with you, though. I think all of the little tutorial things did not make me confident in my knowledge of it. There's a lot of trying it out to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Now, one thing I think would have been cool as an alternative, like I think the IKEA diagrams is a cute, cheeky thing that fits the tone of the game, but like the game like has a story which we will talk about. Kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah.
But you find these dead people who have like been kidnapped before you by this alien species who's making you work in these factories. And they have like classic audio diary logs for you to listen to get backstory. I think it would be cool for you if you show up at a level with a new mechanic for them to have like something that the person who died before you had like set up that like kind of like shows you how it works. And that would be a cool way of teaching it. Like you're following in somebody's footsteps and you're like gaining knowledge from the people who were here before you. I think that would have been really cool.
And this may be asking too much of the developer in terms of like the amount of extra cost that this would be to have created. But like they could have hollow logs. Like it's a sci-fi game. So they could like...
Oh, it's like yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, like you check the it's like a Tacoma. You would like check the log and you would see a hologram of the person in their last moments, which could both further the story, maybe increase the age rating of the game slightly, because like I know at least one guy got like crushed in a horrible industrial accident, but also like could demonstrate the use of the new mechanics in a way that was more tactile, which is like largely the thing. Like we talked about this on Quadrilateral Cowboy. Like that game, I think I grasped a lot quicker because it was of a language that I was more familiar with. Like I am better with verbal stuff, and this game, which is a very visual game, and is the reason that I think it is more accessible than a lot of other games that Zachtronics has made, also tutorializes in a visual way, but one that is just not like the same at all.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Like, I don't know if you've been to a Chipotle recently.
I actually have.
Okay. At Chipotle, they have a card reader that shows the card. It's at a slight angle, which is the only visual clue that you have for this. This description, by the way, which I swear is related to the game, is also going to be very revealing to anybody who thinks that I should have been better at this game than I am. I put my card in of that card reader upside down 100% of the time because the way they have it displayed is the diagram of the card and the chip on the card going down into the thing, and it says like chip side up. And I look at it and I am baffled by the diagram. I say up. Does that mean that the chip should face north? Like up toward, because the diagram makes it look like it should go down. And right now I could not tell you whether, like, if you're holding it horizontally
Uh-huh.
if it should be flipped up toward the ceiling or toward the floor. But whatever it is, I get it wrong every time.
I know. I always when encounter it, I know that the chip faces me. I put it in like the slot. I don't know if you can tap it.
Oh yeah, I found out later you can tap it. I just do that now.
Yeah.
But
Because like I did the same thing. Like the first like 2 times I encountered it, I put it in backwards from what it's supposed to be. But then I learned, like chip faces towards me and not the cashier.
yeah, diagrams very helpful like a tool for conveying information, particularly without using like words, which can sometimes be important. Not perfect solutions.
No.
It was not a perfect tutorial in this game. It also did not help me purchase a burrito.
Well, it's especially difficult to convey like a complex 3D set of actions in a flat 2D like illustration, especially because it's going
Right, like using a credit card.
Yeah, exactly like using a credit card.
Complicated, very understandable. Somebody wouldn't get it.
But yeah, like the emulating like the IKEA style too probably imposed even more limitations on it. Infographics are hard, so probably should have come up with a different way of teaching them.
Yeah, I would agree. They're probably coming up on break time.
Yeah.
This is such an asinine question that I'm using to fill time.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite block?
My fave block.
What's your fave block?
I don't know. It's kind of tough. Maybe pushers.
Pushers are great. I found that any solution that I devised that involved a sensor and a pusher block was wrong. Like, I think about things like I was way too quick to jump to the pusher and the sensor.
Yeah.
Because I think about things in this way that like the quadrilateral cowboy way, where it's like I need an input, like I need something that does an action. And that's not always actually what you need to do. And very often you just need to let the flow of traffic just sort of direct itself without setting anything up
Right.
On your own. I do love the pusher block, though. It's probably my real favorite.
Yeah.
I like the elegant platform. I like that you could build scaffolding with it.
Yeah, it doesn't count towards your
cool.
block count as well.
Yeah. So you could like build up a wall and then like stick welders on top of it to get them out of the way of the rest of your contraptions. So those were cool. Those are some highlights for me for sure.
I like the connectors as well. Like you have to connect the pushers to the sensors. There's something like satisfying about that for some reason. Especially like when you have
the way
to
they
make
sort
it
of snap into place.
Yeah, the way, and you can like sometimes you have to make it snake around stuff. There's something fun about that.
I'm getting so excited just thinking about it.
All that time playing Connects really pays off.
Yeah, that's if you want to go any longer, we could talk about the statistics now, or we can just save it for the next half.
I think we should save it for
after the break. Here goes.
Welcome back to Keenan and Kel.
Yeah, we're back to the second half of Keenan and Kel this week.
Kel loves orange soda.
And I've locked myself in the fridge at the convenience store that I work at. That was a plot line, I think, of that show.
Probably.
Yeah. Because he wanted to get the orange soda. Anyway, we're talking about Infinifactory. And just to sort of like wrap up a bit, talking about the statistics screen that comes up at the end of each level. I think this is sort of, it's in a way, it's related to both halves, I think, of what we're about to go into. So it seems like an okay place to stick this in. I want to come back to an episode that we did on Ghost Runner and another
Right.
episode that we did that's more pertinent on Neon White. Both games are very similar, and both games featured this sort of screen at the end that compares you globally against other people who played the game. And there are things you could say about it, I'm sure. But my main thing is on those games, I described how motivating it was to play sort of against my friends and try and have the fastest time of completing each level. And in this game, it's as if somebody were to say, hey, congratulations on outrunning that lion. But Josh did outrun the lion a little bit better than you did. Do you want to give it another shot? I'm like, fuck no. I'm barely hanging in there. This did not motivate me whatsoever because I was struggling so heartily with the rest of the game that I had, which I think is closer to your experience with with Ghost Runner, at least. You looked at the time and were just like, I don't care.
Exactly. That's
Because
me
this
with
just means I beat the level.
yeah, it's me with like almost any leaderboard. Like I super don't care at all.
That's fair, I think. If that's just sort of like in your personality. But as somebody who definitely is motivated in that way, I was very much not in this case. And it's one of those things that really sort of shows that there's a vast difference between individuals with different life experiences on this planet. Like the fact that somebody could be good enough at this game to optimize it to the level that they are like falling under the average on all of the statistics is just insane to me.
Yeah. I didn't know till today, from watching a review that like you can revisit old puzzles with newer blocks and like just get a way better score than the average. So like it does seem like I feel like and once again I'm like an outsider who doesn't really care about leaderboards, but like it seems like they're impossible to do because people ruin them by cheating.
Yes.
Or well, that's not cheating in this case, but I'm sure people have cheated to get like a score of like 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
One block,
No,
one
that
cycle, you know.
From the very beginning of leaderboards, the dawn of time, this has been an issue. Like that you can't look at a leaderboard without seeing predominantly cheaters at the top of it, which is crazy. And I mean, like, there are some games that do similar things to a leaderboard, like competitive shooters that have like a top number of people. And those are, and I'm saying this with full knowledge that it is not true, mostly cheater free in the sense that because the game relies on a sense of competitive integrity, there are systems in place to ban cheaters before they can get to that level. Whereas a game like this, you can just sort of upload, or like download a cheat program and cheat the game one time and it immediately now you're number one. And there's not really much that it can do about that, aside from like spending a lot of time and effort devising an anti-cheat strategy that is not guaranteed to work, will likely be overridden in time, and is just not worth it at all. So yeah, I agree. It's a little bit. My motivation with a leaderboard is rarely, if ever, to be on the top of it. It's more, am I better than Andy Kinney?
Right. Yeah, I think that works really well in a game like a Neon White or a Ghost Runner, where what you're doing is like trying to go fast, right? Like racing is a concept as old as dirt. But like I feel like the statistic screen means like nothing to me when I look at it. I'm like, Chad got like this many cycles and like this many blocks and whatever. I'm like, I can't visualize what that looks like. Like, I don't know what his
Right.
factory is and how it's better than mine, so I don't really think about it, and I don't care. Even more
Yeah,
so than usual.
I do not know what cycles means in this.
Me
I
neither.
assume it is time, but I don't know in what way it is time. So,
Yeah, I don't get it either. I feel like the game doesn't really explain that at all.
that's true. The game actually doesn't explain a whole lot at all. There is even like I found out that there is a an input speed that makes it so that the blocks come out of the dispensers faster.
Hmm.
That I didn't know about while I was playing the game.
Yeah, me neither.
I only found out about it after I had played the game. So, uh, the game could use a few things to sort of like just explainers, just like a little eye in a circle
Hmm.
that you could hover over and get an explanation. That would be nice.
Yeah, like I know the game's going for like that minimal indie. You're dropped in at the at the deep end, and you just kind of have to figure it out kind of style. But like some kind of more involved tutorial, I think would have gone a long way. Because the game even has a little section at the beginning where you're playing it through it, and like you get your jetpack. It's like a little story sequence. Like, I think they could do like a couple of intermittent things like that teach you the mechanics in a more like active way.
Right. Yeah, all of the interstitial segments of the game are uh story related. They don't actually teach you any mechanics
Hmm.
whatsoever after the very first section. Like you do the training section and then you proceed into the game and you play the game, and then every other time that you aren't playing the game, like solving puzzles, it's either like an alien bit or the part with the resistance, and then like the things that happen in between. You're never in those moments also building stuff. So it sacrifices that as like a safe, clean way of introducing new ideas to the player,
Hmm.
which is potentially kind of a shame
Yeah,
considering
yeah,
how mechanically focused this game is.
yeah, yeah. I still like our hologram idea, because like there's even like towards the beginning there's like a guy who's like presumably still alive who leaves like several different audio logs,
Hmm.
and like you could even have it be him that leaves like the tutorials behind for you. He's like teaching other people who come through how to do stuff. Like you could easily work it. Like the tool pieces are there to like make something that like fits within the game tonally.
Yeah, like there are just many ways to do it, and it's funny like talking about this because like in some ways I feel like we are not qualified to talk about this game.
Yeah.
But then in other ways, I feel like we're the perfect people to talk about this game, right? Because I feel like the majority of people
Hmm.
on the planet are not people who are going to play and connect with this game.
Right.
I think that the people who do seek this type of game out,
Yeah.
and like we play the game because we're people who enjoy finding new experiences, like taking pieces of the culture from around and sort of trying to get an experience out of each of them.
Hmm.
And but if you are like a puzzle game person, you are talking to fucking troglodytes. Like
Yeah. If you beat this game, you might as well not even be listening.
exactly. So it's funny in that way where it's like I think that there could be more tutorials, not because I think that the game needs to be easier because then it wouldn't serve its intended audience,
Hmm.
but because I think it would allow more people to at least get halfway through the game
Right.
so that they can have like they can get their their money's worth,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
time's worth.
Yeah. And I think you could implement it in a way that wouldn't take anything away from those people that are super into it.
Yeah. Especially considering once you do it one time, there's not there you would never have to do it again unless you were doing like a fresh file speed run or something of the
Yeah.
game. But yeah, I think those interstitial bits though, introducing little story elements seems like a segue to me.
Yeah. Yeah, like so I was completely thrown off guard by the presence of a story. Like, cause I feel like the whole setup where you've been kidnapped and like put into like this like cell and like being like, you know, slave labor to run these factories for these aliens is just like a cool setup that I wasn't expecting. And like I feel like the presentation is just stylized enough, and I like the music and stuff. Like the presentation of the game is just so not what I thought it would be. Like I thought like it could get away with being so much less considered and way more utilitarian than it is, and like the people who like it would still like would not care at all, would still love it. So like
Yeah.
I like that all the effort that went into the presentation is there.
Yeah, and not only that, but the story itself is pretty is pretty cool. No, the story itself is told in these like it's drip fed to you in a way that one does not interfere necessarily with the mechanical elements of it, but also is sort of like they set it up in a way that is very believable. I guess is the way that I would say it. Like you, as the main character, quote unquote, not even really, as a character within the story, like you only learn about things through context clues and like what is actually told to you and discarded corpses, essentially. Like as cliche as audio logs are, they are a good way of sort of emphasizing this very lonely world that the game sets up. I was also surprised to find that there is a story in the game, for the record, and was a fan of it whenever I realized what was happening.
Yeah, and like it starts out so slow that it's like almost like a twist that it gets like more involved as it goes. Like when there was like NPCs, I was like, what the fuck?
That like they speak to you in English.
That was
like,
just not at all expecting that.
Yeah, and you know, some people, not gonna name names, might not have gotten to that part of the story.
Yeah.
And had to find out about it later. But I can imagine that person could imagine it being very surprising when that happened, like very twist like you described.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Did you eat all the hamster food when it came down?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Sam.
I felt like very
Sam.
compelled to do it. I'm gonna get the
really
true,
satisfying sound effect.
I'm gonna get the true ending. My character will be healthy and will live the whole game.
I kept wondering if there's going to be like an achievement for eating all the food.
I also thought about that. Good to see that we're on the same page with the hamster food. And then I always put the trophies in the sink when I got back to the room.
Okay. I tried to like space stuff out, but it was just like it's so hard to control.
You just don't have like a shelf to put them on. You either put them on the bed or the ground, or so I just put them in the sink.
Arguably worse than putting it on the bed or the ground, but video games.
Do you feel like you would use like a sandbox mode for this game?
No. I am famously not a. I don't want to say not a creative person. Creativity comes in a lot of different ways. You know, like people do different things, and that in order to fulfill the creative needs that they have. Building stuff is not my bag. I never played with Legos. I never played Minecraft. I'm a very intrinsic goal motivated person. I like to be told a thing to do when I'm playing a game. My choice was to play the game in the first place.
Right.
The game should take over from there. I don't want to have And like I like experimentation, but which to me is different than just like creating something whole cloth, which is what the thing is here, like the sandbox mode.
Yeah, I think of you as a sandbox mode kind of guy, so I was curious if that carried over. If you had like, I could totally see you having some idea for like a weird machine that you would want to build in the sandbox mode.
Yeah, that's more like the Incredible Machine, which is something that I do enjoy. Or like Ultra
Tears of
Hand
the Kingdom.
in the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Yep. I do love that kind of stuff because it allows me to sort of like in real time play with stuff. Infinifactory is like, what is my end result going to be, right? Like it's never going to be something funny.
Right.
Like I'm just going to make like, it's going to be a square of some kind, some blocky thing. And I'm just not like cut out for that kind of work.
Yeah. You don't want to build like a 8-bit Mario or anything like that.
Right. You know, you saw my gummy ship no clip logo. The 8-bit Mario would not have turned out that well.
I bet somebody's built a gummy ship in the sandbox mode in this game.
It does seem compatible.
Yeah, like what can I make with blocks? A gummy ship, obviously. But I can guarantee no one's ever made the no clip logo.
We're just that original. Netflix.
Did you find it really satisfying to watch your factory work?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yeah, it made me think of like watching all the ghosts play all of your attempts at once in Meat Boy for some reason.
Oh yeah, that is good shit. This is one of those games where I'm like very happy that it is not my gameplay in the YouTube video.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe it is. I don't know. Want to leave up the possibility so that people don't immediately assume that it's going to have your name at the end.
Yeah,
so
I did not actually record the footage yet.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to have to just go back and play like an hour and a half tomorrow.
But I will say that I did capture a few iterations of things running just because I thought they were particularly like unique designs, things that just things that I thought worked in a funny way. There was one that I had to keep tweaking over and over again in order to get a 4 wide block to like slot and fall so that it could get to the end. And so it's like this structured mirrored machine that has 2 conveyors that like move something down it and then toward where I'm looking at in the perspective of me watching it complete. And then one side of it just has a giant U bend in it.
Yeah.
Because I had to get it to move over. And that cracked me up because it was like, you could tell like at what point my plan failed and I had to make adjustments. Yeah. I was like that. And to me, like that tells a story. That's a cool thing. And I liked and so watching that like made me very happy to see it like actually work.
Yeah. The less happy the alien overlords were, the more happy you were.
Exactly. That's my rebellious spirit. I declare.
Yeah. Did you ever find this probably is just a me thing, like find yourself flying around the map like looking for like a secret cave or something?
Well, there was a secret cave that was not very secret that had some like dwarves
with the TNT in it.
Yeah. So there were that I think was when I was like, oh, maybe I should be like looking for stuff. And that was pretty close to when the game defeated me. Yeah. So I did not spend much time looking for secrets.
Yeah, like the first time like a body showed up, I was like, oh, I have to like fly. Like, what happens if I try and like fly over to that spaceship in the skybox? It doesn't let you. But I was like, my cryptic indie game poisoned brain was like, oh, I bet there's like some kind of secret thing you can do. Like there will be a map where there's like a glitch in the matrix and you can fly out of the fucking play space and like find a secret area or something.
Right.
As far as I know, there's nothing like that, but that's where my brain went.
There's a puzzle you have to solve by altering a text file in the game.
Yeah, of course.
Directory. Yeah, you're like, oh, okay. No, I've seen this before.
But yeah, like you try to fly away and it like puts like a like do not fly your jetpack sign up on the screen and then like just works you back.
I'm sad I didn't get to experience that.
Oh yeah, it's actually like on some of the levels, like you don't have to fly up that high for it to trigger. So I'm surprised you never did it on accident.
I struggled more with controlling my character than I would like to admit. I don't think that I don't think that the game's controls are bad. I think that I am used to other systems.
Yeah.
Because I know very frequently I would want to go up and I would look up straight up in the air and then hold the go forward key.
Oh, that's weird.
To like, so if I was like moving laterally, I would turn up and go that way.
Yeah.
But you hit space to rise.
Right. So you were thinking of it
down.
like you were flying a spaceship.
Kind of, yeah. Like, yeah, I would have a forward impulse at all times, which I want to say is how nothing works. I think I made up this idea.
Yeah, like that
plot.
just seems really strange.
Yeah, it's like that's not how it works in like Outer Wilds, which is a
No.
space game where you have a jetpack. I don't know where I came up with that idea, but like I would do it regularly. Like
Yeah.
it just to me made sense, and I would go like, "Oh, oops," because I would look back down and be like, "I'm in the same place."
Yeah. Now, like I found the controls to be like I don't want to say perfect, but like really intuitive to the point where I feel like the game itself can be so complicated. You really want the controls to be like easy to do what you want to do with them. And it felt like it really hit that spot for me where they really felt like invisible, which I was surprised by because, yeah, like I said, it feels like it could be really fidgety with lots of menus and, you know, like hard to like put things where you want them. But I think it all worked really well.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, the only like control issue I would say that I had is that when you're placing things that have a direction, you can like drag them and they will all go in the same direction. But if you just like put it down, I think it wants to go with whatever your most recent direction was.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sometimes I would place stuff down. Like there were multiple times where I'd be like, I just want to complete this conveyor, like a line that goes to the end. And so I'd click and drag and then leave and then start the thing and realize that I just like clicked and dragged in the wrong direction. So like my contraption would go all the way through the machine and then would get to that point and then just get stuck going back and forth. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now I have to go back and do it. Keep in mind, they put arrows on all of them. Like
Right.
I have to ignore that and just make assumptions in order for it to go wrong. But
Right.
it was a thing that happened like in every level. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
would put a conveyor in the wrong place and have to rearrange it or think about it more than like what I would think of. But it's one of those things. The controls of the game are not like complicated necessarily, but they are pulling a lot of function. There's a lot happening. So I can't exactly blame them for there being some things that were unintuitive to me,
Right.
whereas maybe they're perfect for somebody else. Like, I don't know. Also, I think you could like put blocks on like a hot bar
Yeah.
so that you could just like hit 1, 2, 3 to get to them. And I just like never did that. So that's on me.
Yeah. I noticed the hot bar too, but then just like never used it either.
Yeah, but just for some reason, looking at the menu was always like the right thing for me to do.
Yeah.
I feel like the only other thing that I had noted that I wanted to mention was very boring, and that is that I think that the music in the game is very relaxing. It's weird paired with the narrative. Like if I described this game to you on a narrative level and said it's a game where you're enslaved by an alien race in order to construct warships and missiles, you'd be like, oh damn, that sounds like rad. But like when you think about the actual gameplay, it's like, okay, you don't want music that's really bombastic because it would drive the player to the brink of madness with the amount of time that you have to spend in some of these levels. And so I do like the music and found it to be good, but also because of its nature. There was nothing that was like super memorable that came out of it for me.
Yeah. No, I like the music a lot too. Like, I feel like the game, like the visuals and the music make the game surprisingly like atmospheric, for what it is. So yeah, like I almost thought of it like the aliens, like almost as like diegetic like music. Like the aliens like want you to be productive, so they play this like chill music.
It's lo-fi beats
To work
create
too.
infinite factories
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
So they're like a company playlist.
Oh yeah, that was the thing I was gonna say earlier was the fact that this game is called Infinifactory, referring to the fact that you make a factory that produces the same thing over and over again, with the goal of making something that just repeats the same process. Is doubly surprised me that there was a narrative in the game, because that the name of the game really did not imply to me that there was going to be any narrative content whatsoever. But similar to how there's how the music could be interpreted as diegetic, did not seem like the kind of thing that it would not be something I would have thought of in the game Infinifactory that I was picturing.
Right. Yeah, it almost could have like a double meaning too, where like you're infinitely making factories because you are enslaved.
That's true. And also, nobody has ever completed the game before.
Right. No one's ever been to the bottom of the shaft.
No one's ever been to the bottom of the shaft. What a very specific reference for no one.
Dude, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. It's honestly a reference for like half our audience.
Right.
Well, do we have eviscerated thoughts?
I'm not just gonna go with factory thoughts.
Factory thoughts. What are your industrial factory thoughts? It is.
I guess we did abandon the F thing a long time ago, so
I still like to go with it when it's obvious.
Yeah.
Like it was here.
My factory thoughts are coming across the conveyor belt right now. So yeah, this game, like Quadrilateral Cowboy before it, is super not for me. Although I do appreciate like the visual language because I am more of a visual person. So this definitely felt like way more accessible. That's probably how it ended up on the list in the first place. Because I had heard of Zachtronics and how they're like these niche puzzle games that people who love them like fucking love them. And this is the only one that looked approachable at all. So that's how we ended up here. But there are a lot of things that like surprised me about it, like the inclusion of the narrative and it being like surprisingly atmospheric, and like there being some of the audio logs are actually like, kind of thought provoking and interesting. Like there's like one of them like the first one you find I think is like the woman that died like trying to use the jetpack. It was like that kind of like that took me by surprise. So a lot of the presentation stuff I like big thumbs up for me. Pleasant surprise. But yeah, like I struggle with these kind of puzzle games. I think like really internalizing the rules. If they're like they work complex like this, and like it's hard to internalize how like when I throw, and there's so many pieces. It's like I throw these 3 pieces at this welder. Like how are they going to stick together? Like oh, it didn't stick together the way I thought. Is the problem the way the blocks are going in? Is it the configuration of the welders? Like it's hard to know. Like there's so many factors. It can be really hard to work through the problem, and I bounce off that kind of stuff. Like as I said, I think in the first half, like I'm just like I am not smart in the way that an engineer is smart. So I find this game is very hard for me. I only made it like maybe halfway. I was halfway down the screen of levels, so I assume that's halfway. Yeah, before I think we quit around the same time. Yeah, so very much not my kind of game, but there was a surprising amount I think to like in it for me anyway. The early levels really satisfying, and I was like stoked that I was actually able to get through them by myself. So I felt very accomplished in the early in the early hours, but yeah, then as expected, ratcheted up pretty quickly. So I'd say, I don't know, like kind of a surprisingly positive experience, given that I thought I'd bounce off of it harder than I did. So
Yeah. I agree with most of that. Potentially all of that. I know I 100% you are correct on how this game ended up on our list in the first place. It's a company, I guess, Zachtronics, a developer that is that was appealing to us in a way that they were like a niche developer making a very specific kind of game, which is always something that's like I kind of want to like see what it's about. Like if somebody's that like dedicated to something, and of their games, Infinifactory is by a bazillion% the most approachable of all of them. And so yeah, like it's a game that while I think it is very approachable on a base level, I think that like the deeper that you get into the game, it really does amp up its complexity to a point where the approachability of it, the fact that it is a 3D game that takes place within a space, starts to hinder its own ability to create like a level of readability for people who are not like just embedded experts at the game at that point. Because man, it gets tough. You like get to a point where things start having to overlap and line up in such a way that it is now more difficult to think about it as a real thing than it would be to sort of like have it written out as a list of processes. And that is, I think, the point where the game becomes just like it too much for the average person. And I don't think that these games are being made for the average person. So I think that that is okay, largely. I think it may have been all the way back on like the Star Fox 64 episode where we talked about how all games don't need to be for everyone. And this is a great example of that. Not in the same context that we were talking about it there at all, but yeah. So this is like, to me, I was very pleasantly surprised with the beginning of this game. I thought the first several levels were extremely good. A fun time, and solving the problems was a satisfying experience and one that made me feel good about doing. And then my spirit was summarily crushed afterward as the game became more complicated, and essentially my patience ran out. Like I am historically not a very patient person. And it's one of those things where, similar to like The Witness, right? Like you could spend the time at learning this game's language and figure out what it is it's asking you to do. But that is time that I could be spending on other things. So I ended up cutting my experience with this short because I wasn't really willing to engage with it at that level. But if you are the kind of person who is, I highly recommend this game. And even if you're not, the game's nearly a decade old at this point. If you can get it cheaply, it's interesting enough, I think, as a puzzle game to just sort of see what Zachtronics is about, because it does bear the stamp of many of their other games. So it's a cool game. It's debatably like one of the best puzzle games that I've ever played, in the sense that it is a very well-designed, well-oiled machine, pun definitely intended. And and then also has just like a little bit of extra stuff, the little sauce on top in the form of the narrative and the music and stuff like that. So definitely something I do really like, but definitely also something that is just beyond my grasp. So, yep. 10 out of 10.
IGN.com.
IGN.com. Rent it.
This is the best game I ever played. 7 out of 10. IGN.com.
7 out of 10. All right. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What will the die say? This is the first game, right?
This was in fact the first game,
All right,
unbelievably.
What will be the second Mystery Summer Theater game? Oh, you have the table up?
I'm actually working on it right now.
Okay. They're waiting with bated breath.
They really are. All right, I've got it up.
4.
Mystery May is really taking a theme right now. Next time, we're going to be talking about abduction.
Oh, is this game the game that's like Mist?
Yeah. It's
God,
like
this is the most cerebral month.
I know, my head hurts. It's like three puzzle games and Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah, Mystery Summer Theater, more like Mystery Summer like summer school.
Oh god, the anti-intellectualism on the No Clip podcast is really coming out. Oh my god, why are you making me think more?
You can only take feeling dumb so much in 1 month.
Anyway, yes, we're playing Abduction from the creators of Myst, and it is a Myst-alike game. Oh, good, it's also in the Cerebral Puzzle Showcase as of August 3rd, 2023. Continuous as we confront the holes in our education on our continuing adventures through Mystery May.
Well, at least we're getting all these games out of the way.
So next year is going to be all dumb games.
It'll just become educational games. Like I'll roll and it'll be like, okay, next time we're playing Reader Rabbit 2nd grade.
It'll be Reader Rabbit 2nd grade, then Mad World, and then fucking Freddy Fish
kindergarten.
Yeah, Mavis Beacon teaches typing.
And then Hatred.
Yeah, and then Hatred, obviously. Seems good. Until that time, I forgot to close the podcast. Hold on. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to all of our contact information, our Discord server, our Twitter account, the Mystery May table, so you can take a look at what futures did not occur. And then we will be moving on from Mystery May into regular episodes, and you can check out all of our old episodes and our past Mystery May episodes by going to our YouTube channel. You can check out games such as Quadrilateral Cowboy.
Yeah, Baba Is You.
Fucking Catherine.
Yeah, that is another one about moving blocks around.
Exactly. Tetris. We didn't do that one.
Nope.
Super Mario Maker 2, a game about moving blocks around. Yeah, there it is.
Perfect.
God of War on the PlayStation 3. 2. 1. Now you can come. Anyway.
Legacy of Soul Reaver, a game where you move blocks around.
Perfect. Legacy of Soul Reaver.
There's the joke. We found it.
It was there all along. Construct that like button.
Create a series of conveyor belts to get you to the subscribe button. And then install a pusher to hit it with.
Free all of the humans enslaved by aliens in the comment section.
Yeah, listen to all their audio logs in the comment section.
Welcome to No Clip. I'm Chad Rutherman, and today we're talking about an action-packed video game that's going to blow your dick right off of your balls.